Boom! Texas adds Myron Charles, the defensive lineman out of Port Charlotte, Florida. I know that boom it's like an echo effect. It's been a couple of days, but we wanted to do Myron Charles and his commitment justice. He committed right after the Michigan game. And so, Gerry, you and I didn't get a full chance to just give him his own video. Rod Babers didn't get his chance to do the 411 deep dive on his ability as well. So Myron Charles, buddy, this is for you. For Texas fans out there unfamiliar with Myron, because he committed during that or right after that game. We also want to get you up to speed on him as well. Of course, Myron visited Texas back over the summer. Was a young man that looked at Texas, Florida State, as well as a number of different schools. He and Josiah Sharma came in on the same official visit, Gerry. Sharma opted for Oregon later that same day. A week or so after the visit, Charles went to FSU. Fast forward a month, Sharma revisits Texas, commits to Texas. Then FSU kind of goes in I don't even know what you would call where they're at right now. And Charles, Texas maintains contact. We talk about how Steve Sarkisian and his staff recruit. They stay in contact, do not burn bridges, and keep trying to build relationships. And Myron Charles commits to the University of Texas, 6'4", 285 pounds. Defensive lineman out of Port Charlotte, Florida. Gerry, your take on Myron Charles?
Yeah, the first thing we continue to hear is Mandarin High, Jamie French, Port Charlotte, Myron Charles. These are schools and areas Texas has never won in recruiting and never really tried in recruiting that hard. But now that's where we're at under Steve Sarkisian in the move to the SEC. Here you see Myron Charles, Port Charlotte there. I mean, he's one of the highest upside defensive linemen in the country. And it really originally came down to FSU in Texas. He visited Florida, he visited Miami. That shows you where Texas was. They were the only out-of-state school that got an official visit out of Myron Charles. And I do think, look, he almost got back in town that last weekend in July. FSU did a good job holding that off. There you see a guy that's got some power, too, and he hadn't even hit a college strength and conditioning program, by the way. Quickness and power combination with size and length. I went and saw him in the spring, and so all of that, those numbers are legit. The 80-inch wingspan, 10.5-inch hands. He's got all of that. But look, that shows you where Texas is at, that they were the only out-of-state school that got an official visit for one of the top tackles in the country who's out of Port Charlotte, Florida. It's just not things we've talked about here before covering Texas. So Texas is entering new territory. They're winning in the state of Florida in new areas, different schools, different areas of the state, different counties of the state of Florida. And then you get to him as a defensive lineman, him and Sharman. Suddenly Texas has a really good pair of defensive linemen committed in this class, and they want 4 in the class. Well, you're now set up to have a top 3 or 4 defensive line class in the country if you add 2 more guys of this talent level of him and Sharma. That's just where it's at. I mean, you're going to be talking at the end of the day potentially about a Georgia and LSU in Texas, best D-line classes in 2025. That's the company you want to be in. I mean, that's where you want to be. So we'll see how everything shapes up. But again, these are the first 2 D tackles Texas brought in on visits. They were the early weekend. So that was telling as well that these guys came in early. They were 2 of the top targets for Texas. And Texas ends up flipping both of these guys. And look, both early enrollees. They're set up to be early enrollees. They should be on campus in January.
Interesting. You mentioned not only Charles, but Jamie French committed. You got Jarrett Gibson from last year, Cedric Baxter the year before. Texas really reaching into the state of Florida. And right now, you would think that they should, given that the fact that 2 of those 3 teams seem to be in a little bit of turmoil. Down in the Sunshine State. Tell us a little bit more about Myron Charles, Gerry, if you don't mind, what you think his strengths are and what you think he really brings to the table for the Longhorns.
Yeah, so I think it's just a combination. The tape's pretty telling from a frame and the natural ability standpoint. Look, he's flexible. He's a flexible kid, good ankle flexibility. He can really turn and run. He doesn't round off angles for a big guy, right? I mean, he takes good angles. He takes athletic angles and has athletic lateral movement and change of direction movement. There you see, I mean, his stance is going to be inconsistent. He's a powerful. Geez. He is a state of Florida public school football player. The setup's not there. His coaching staff does a really good job. Edgewater staff did a great job with Baxter. Mandarin does a really good job at that program, but it's not the same setup as Texas. You don't have the same athletic period setup, the same football that filters down to junior high like you do in Texas, the same facilities, the same number of full-time members on the staff. So these kids come out of high school more raw. When you're watching Myron Charles, realize he's going to make a massive jump year one in a college strength and conditioning program. But what he has that you can't coach at 6'4", 285, 80-plus wingspan, 10.5-inch hands, initial quickness, and not just the first step quickness. He's got second step quickness. He's got explosive natural strength that you can build on. Again, and he's a kid who has shown a pretty good motor, 2 seasons, 60-plus tackles, 17 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks as a sophomore and junior combined headed into his senior season. But a guy at Port Charlotte that I think on the senior tape, you're starting to see him take even more steps, and he's retaining his athleticism as he's adding those 15, 20 pounds naturally.
Hey, wow. Look at that play, getting outside the numbers to make that tackle. Hey, Gerry, you mentioned Port Charlotte. Where in Florida, for geographically, is that? Isn't that on the southwest side? Yeah,
that's the southwest corridor, south of Tampa. In that area, as you get south towards Venice, in Florida, in that area. So again, that I-4 corridor, Orlando down to the I-4 corridor, and Southwest Florida is an area that Tashard Choice has a lot of experience recruiting in. This wasn't a Tashard Choice recruitment, though. This was Jeff Banks and Kenny Baker. Jeff Banks had some connections in that area from his time at Alabama. So Texas is doing a very good job recruiting in that area. We also have failed to mention Diabell in the 26th class, committed out of Broward County, American Heritage. He's a quarterback. It's a little different. He's lighting it up, by the way, for people that haven't seen his junior tape. But this is Southwest Corridor of Florida once again. The Jamie French commitment was huge because that was Jacksonville. That's an area Texas has never signed a top prospect or got a commitment from a top prospect for. But Port Charlotte High, Texas has never had anybody from Port Charlotte either. So, I mean, Texas is reaching new heights in recruiting, going to new territories, and it's for some of the top prospects in the state of Florida who have the big 3 offers plus are national or SEC level recruits high.
All right. Texas now in the top 5 or 6, depending on who you look at, national recruiting rankings. Boy, if I had a dollar for every time somebody asked me, is Texas going to have a top 5 class again? Is Texas going to have a top 5 class again? Well, 2 games into the 2024 season, and I think that I don't know if Texas is going to be a top 5, but it ain't going to be very far away. let's put it that way. What's the old saying with Earl Campbell that Bum Phillips had? I don't know if he's at the head of the class, or what class he's in, but it sure doesn't take long to call the roll.
That's right.
That's where Texas is at right now. With this recruiting class. Top number 20 commitment, Myron Charles, big defensive lineman. Texas now has 2 defensive linemen. You mentioned trying to get 4 possibly. Just all depends on a number of different things. The recruiting class as a whole is starting to take that Steve Sarkisian shape of legit big-time players, legit depth. Everything we've been talking about, Gerry, about Texas growing into a big-time program. It's not just what they're doing on the field. It's talent acquisition. It's the player development. It's the whole ball of wax. And it feels like the snowball is rolling downhill right now in Austin.
Texas got some big athletic guys on defense suddenly in this class. Lance Jackson, Josiah Sharma, Myron Charles, Elijah Barnes at linebacker, Jonah Williams at safety. They've suddenly got some big athletic bodies at all those positions in this class, and there's more to come.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, hey, we want to give way now to Rod Babers, the former NFL player. Breaks down a little film of Myron Charles, tells us what he likes, what he wants to see from the young man. But to Myron Charles and your family and the rest of Longhorn Nation, I got to say this, Myron, hook 'em, buddy.
Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm here to give you my personal evaluation of the Longhorns' latest commitment, the commitment of Myron Charles, the defensive tackle out of Florida. Really excited when I got a chance to watch his film. First of all, he is a violent player. Right? So in addition to the physical attributes that he brings to the tables, he's got all the physical tools that you need. 6'4", 295, extremely raw, but he is a violent player, plays with a streak of nasty to him, which is what I like about him. Number one, jumps off the film. There's a kind of natural brutality to the young man's game, and you want that from a defensive tackle, somebody who plays violent. I love the fact that he also, I mean, like I said, this guy's a bullet on the football field. That's basically kind of one of the best ways I can describe it. You'll see him actually pancake guys. There you go. I mean, he puts offensive linemen on their back and on their knees. And I don't even know if you have a term for a defensive equivalent of a pancake. I don't know if it's a flapjack. Maybe you call it a Debo from Friday, because he's a bully. He's a neighborhood bully, man. He Debos a lot of offensive linemen. He's really got the ability to reset the line of scrimmage. And for a lot of offensive linemen, so for a lot of defensive linemen, they don't necessarily have that. This guy wants to reset the line and either push the guys back with a bull rush or find a way to penetrate and make plays in the backfield. His speed to power transition, I think, is next level. If you want to ask me what his elite traits and elite tools are, he's got a really impressive speed to power transition, and you can see it on bull rushes when he knocks guys back on their butts. Also, what I like about him too is he's got active hands. They're not necessarily violent hands. I think that's something he's going to work on. I think that's adding more power to his punches, but he's got really active hands. They're not lazy hands. You'll see some guys, they get caught up leaning on guys with their hands. No, he's really active, uses those hands. He's raw fundamentally, but his upside is absolutely tremendous. I think he actually can play multiple shades. And, one of the comments that I actually read about the young man, he believes he can play multiple shades. I think he can now. He's 6'4", 290, 6'4", 300. So primarily it's going to be a D tackle. But even Texas right now, they got D tackles playing multiple shades. We just watched the Michigan game. They had a package where they threw 3 D tackles out there on the field at one time, playing multiple shades. I think that's something they're going to value in terms of the versatility this young man can bring to the table. Surprising hip flexibility for a guy his size. Usually a guy that kind of size, you don't see a lot of hip flexibility. You see that with this young man. That's a raw trait you can really build on. He's added some burst and some ball get off. That's not necessarily an elite trait of his as well, but I've seen him since his senior season. He has added some BGO. He's added a little bit of burst. He's got a keen awareness as well for misdirection, screens, second reaction plays. Has the ability to change direction when he identifies the football. So I love that about him too. So you just don't get guys this kind of size that move the way that Myron Charles does. So the Longhorns got a hell of a prospect. Like I said, he's raw, but man, he's got things you just cannot teach. That size, hip flexibility for a guy his size. He's got natural power, the speed, transition. Look at that. I mean, he just bullies guys. He plays bully ball from a defensive lineman's perspective, because he just mashes offensive linemen and constantly resets the line of scrimmage. He's always playing in the opponent's backfield. So much to like about this young man. And hell, D tackle guys, I talk about this all the time, it's becoming a premium position in the NFL. There are more D tackles in the league right now making at least $20 million than defensive ends making at least $20 million. And this young man's got some of them raw tools and raw traits they pay for. They pay for a D tackle to be an elite run defender and also an elite pass defender. Can you do both? Can you project to be a guy that can play on every down? Myron Charles got that kind of upside, that kind of skill set where ultimately if he achieves the his highest level, the best version of himself, he can be one of them dudes. All right, that's my personal evaluation of Myron Charles, the defensive tackle out of Florida, latest commitment for the Longhorns.